Hey YouTube, it is Melody here for week 6 check-in for the Artist Way. There has been a heat wave where I live and I have been suffering inside of Satan's asshole for 7 days straight. Week 6 is recovering a sense of abundance. At this point, I've been doing the Artist Way for about a month now, and week 6 is where the experience for me was falling a little flat. This chapter is heavily focused on finances, luxuries, and God, the universe, higher power, whatever you want to say. That's not to say that there aren't some good talking points within this chapter. I did find some of it to be valid and have some good advice, but overall, I find it hard to prescribe to the idea that if I just believe God is going to make all of my dreams come true, that it's just gonna happen and that they will be and everything's gonna be okay. But we'll just go ahead and dive in. This is another shorter chapter. I just started week 7 a couple days ago, and that one is a little bit more in depth than what the past couple chapters have been. But anyways, we'll dive in, discuss some of what Julia says, and I'll specifically focus on what I thought had some merit to it. To begin with week 6, the first section is entitled The Great Creator. If you've done the Artist Way before, or if you've watched any of my other videos, to the 5 people who've watched, we have been discussing that we are the creator, but there is also a creator within the universe. And so building off of that relationship, we ourselves are the creator, but we are also a conduit that releases creativity from within. So God, or the universe, essentially is speaking this creativity into us, and we allow it to speak through us due to that flow of creativity. As Julia's been kind of boinking us on the head with over and over again, we allow creativity in our lives, and thus it just happens. We don't need to go looking for it. If we allow things to be given to us, if we allow inspiration to strike us, we will find that we don't have to go searching too hard for it. The plate is being delivered to us with what we need. We just have to actually take it and, ingest it instead of smashing it onto the ground. This is some of the idea around this passage of the Great Creator. And essentially that's kind of our goal with the Great Creator, with God, with the universe. Side note, as I was kind of writing my thoughts about this, I kept wanting to refer to God as a he because of my Christian upbringing. He is gendered as a man. It is very much a patriarchal belief in hierarchy there. So I will try my best to not automatically prescribe God as a male figure. If we believe that they will provide us with abundance and opportunity, and that they will supply us feed for our creative hunger, it will happen. And that's that. And Julia says that this can be kind of difficult to grasp for people, the idea that we just kind of accept that this is a reality and it will then just happen to us. And one of the reasons for that, Julia says, is money, our beliefs around money, around God. Those ultimately influence how we creatively block ourselves in our lives. Specifically, Julia says, for many of us, we're raised to believe that money is the real source of security. A dependence on God feels foolhardy, laughable, even suicidal. We're the ones who keep clothes on our backs. We're the ones who buy the groceries, and we will pursue our art, we tell ourselves, when we have enough money to do it easily. However, she asks, when will that be? When will we ever have enough? She continues, we want a God that feels like a fat paycheck and a license to spend as we please. And I'm just kind of reading this like, well, fucking duh. Like, that would be super fucking awesome, I mean, that's less stress on me, you know what I'm saying? Continuing, listening to the siren song of more, we are deaf to the still small voice waiting in our soul to whisper, you're enough. Again, I'm reading this and it's kind of like, it's a nice idea and I get the thought process here, but I just find it a little out of touch with reality because, I mean, you do need money to pursue a lot of things in your life. You know what I'm saying? Now, you just want to play piano as a hobby and it's just like kind of a funsy thing for you, then maybe that's not the case. But to build a career off of the arts, art is an expensive fucking hobby. If you're a musician, if you're a painter, those two, just off the top of my head, are very expensive hobbies. So I'm reading this and I'm like, well, yeah, it would be nice if, God were like a money tree, because at least that motherfucker would be useful for something. I digress. So, diving deeper into the chapter, Julia then discusses how often we can view God as a fraud, that we may think that God doesn't necessarily take creativity seriously enough to help us or to bless us with opportunities or supply us with things that would assist us in our creative endeavors. She uses an example like Alcoholics Anonymous and how a lot of the times they do place a lot of importance on like a spiritual relationship or having faith, because that to them gives them a sense of guidance, which I'm like, I feel like there's probably a lot of recovering alcoholics who don't believe in God, but I digress. So anyways, sorry, I'm getting off track. So she says that we also might be against this notion of a God or the universe providing an abundance for us because we're not desperate enough. We're not at such a low point in our lives. Anything and everything we'll believe in. We might not feel like we have so many unanswered questions or this, that, and the third that we need something like a God to supply that for us. And because of that, again, we might find it foolish to believe about this. We might find it idealistic that a God would care about these things. We view them as something trivial. This is also something we have been discussing, how we view passions and art as lesser than and not something to prioritize. There's more important things, and specifically in this chapter we're talking about money being important and maybe the most important thing. At the core of all of this, to really blame as to why this is so difficult for us to kind of comprehend or to accept is, one, our financial concerns are a way to avoid pursuing our art, and they also stunt our spiritual growth. We put too much faith in the dollar, she says. Nobody's going to pay me to be more creative. Secondly, we hold on to the thought process of a toxic God, often tied to what we've been taught through religion. And because of this, Julia challenges us to think of what a non-toxic God might look like. What would they do for us? What would we ask them, or how would we speak to them if we didn't have this negative connotation with the idea of God and what God is? And if we were to change our way of thinking, would we finally place them as the highest power in our lives? I will say I have some qualms with this whole thing. I do feel like some of what is being discussed in this specific chapter is coming from a little bit of a privileged perspective. You know, for people who are struggling paycheck to paycheck, people who are homeless, living out of their cars, people who might choose sleeping over eating because they just don't have the money. I think of people like that, and so I just feel like some of this is kind of out of touch with the reality of the world that we live in. Poverty is not a new thing, you know, but I think we can acknowledge that it's not getting any better either. I feel like no matter how you view God or a higher power, it's still not magically going to lift you out of being poor or being out of poverty. Poverty is an intentional system placed upon people living in a capitalist society. The system intends for people to stay poor. It's not designed for you to work your way out. You know, the whole pulling yourself up by the bootstraps is a load of bullshit. We all know this, and if you don't, it's time that you recognize. Again, I can see value in here, and I understand perspective does matter a lot regardless of where you are in life. And I do believe that you should pursue and do what you're passionate about, no matter the circumstances. I do believe that where there's a will, there's a fucking way. And I also do think that people value work over real relationships with friends, family, lovers, community. I do think that's a real thing. People often will prioritize work and how much money they can make over what they're actually passionate about. And workaholic people who feel like they have to constantly be grinding. Because of capitalism, this kind of grind culture, we have this uptick in entrepreneur lifestyle, having side hustles all the time. It's almost like every second of the day you should be using it as a way to be productive and to make money. Everything needs to be monetized. You can't just do something for the love of it. You're expected to make money off of it somehow. There is this mindset, if you're not always doing something and making money, that you're kind of a failure and it's shameful. The idea that, rest is bad and it's something that we shouldn't do. It's laziness. We look at things that we love, our passions, as something that shouldn't take priority because we have to keep working. We have to be productive every second of the day. Julie also points this out too, but we see this all the time in the news and in media. There's this kind of romanticized romanticized idea of struggle and the difficulty of life. And we see how so many of these stories of people's struggles get viewed as something virtuous or as something inspiring, when really that's not the case. And it's more so a depiction of how unjust the world is and how so many people are left behind and forgotten and are meant to fend for themselves. Something that's a sad reality, and it's not something to aspire to. There's nothing virtuous. You're not a better person than other people because you're constantly going through the struggle and you made it out the other side, and that doesn't give you like a one up because you choose to keep suffering. You know, some people make that active choice of like they're pushing themselves all the time, always working, always on. And often these people are so out of touch by the time they reach such a grandiose place in their life of having so much privilege and money that they just become out of touch with the real fucking world and what it's like to just be a regular person. All that being said, because we tend to think this way and we're trapped in this idea of always having to be pushing ourselves and making money and never allowing ourselves any joy, what have you, we can also tend to equate art with nonsensical things as a time waster, as it's just foolish. It's not going to pay the bills, which we've, I'm sure, been told by a bunch of family and other people in our lives. Do you think she's right about that? And I think this can tie back into the virtue trap that we were discussing last week. And so ultimately, Julia has some solutions to this, and they're a little bit layered. So first would be to stop thinking that art is sensible to begin with. Stop trying to logic your way around your creativity. We can't enjoy the process. We can't enjoy our passion if we're always trying to make sense out of them and only think about what they can do for us financially, and constantly making it about something other than just the joy that it brings you. 2, stop blaming God for everything, she says, and instead believe that God's abundance will flow into your life. It isn't God's fault you didn't go to Europe. It's not God's fault that you never took the painting class. It's your fault. And to that extent, I mean, I do agree. You know, we need to take responsibility for the choices that we make in our lives. Nothing's stopping you from doing the painting class besides yourself and your own, more than likely, insecurities or maybe your ego or whatever it might be. You have to accept that and take some accountability that you often are the one holding yourself back, not other people or God, for instance. She has kind of said this before, but the universe is extravagant. The universe knows no bounds, and so is God. She says, as you expect God to be more generous, God will be able to be more generous to you. She says, you are the cheapskate, not God. As I said, that we're a conduit. If we allow ourselves to be open to that and to receive it, it will be handed to us in different ways in our lives. We believe that it can be possible and stop denying it or limiting ourselves. I do think there's some merit to a lot of what she's saying in this section specifically, and I think some of it is true. Again, you just have to put it into perspective and realize in what aspects you can relate to this due to your own, life circumstances. I did really like how she ended this section. She says that what we really want to do is what we are really meant to do. When we do what we are meant to do, money comes to us, doors open for us, we feel useful, and the work we do feels like play to us. And I do think that is important. When you love what you do, it shouldn't ever feel like work. And if it does, that's usually a sign of some type of disservice that is being done to you or that you're doing to yourself. Self-doubt, shame, self-sabotage, not allowing yourself alone time, not giving yourself rewards, not giving yourself breaks, not reaffirming yourself, encouraging yourself. That is the leeway into the next and final section, which is luxury. This specific section is, in my eyes, really speaking to people who have yearned and yearned to indulge in something creative, but either refuse it or deny themselves that luxury. Specifically, she says we're looking at authentic luxury, and authentic luxury is what can be a fix to this specific issue of blocking yourself creatively and denying yourself your joy and your passion. And again, the key word here is authentic. So Julia says, because art is born in expansion and a belief in sufficient supply, it is critical that we pamper ourselves for the sense of abundance it brings to us. So this kind of makes me think, remember how we've been discussing filling the well, nourishing our creativity, creativity, allowing ourselves a safe space. Essentially, we need to also reward ourselves, give ourselves gifts. So maybe set up something in our house that kind of just gives us a reminder that we're allowed to be creative, we're allowed to create. And of course, this is like different for everybody. She does give different examples of kind of what this means to people. She says that all too often we become blocked and blame it on our lack of money. Again, the issue of finances coming up. But this is never an authentic block. The actual block is our feeling of constriction, our sense of powerlessness. Art requires us to empower ourselves with choice. At the most basic level, this means choosing to do self-care. And I do definitely think it's a good point that because of finances or lack thereof, it definitely does make you feel powerless. It makes you feel like you are constricted to certain things. And I think that feeling can really take hold of us and be a cloud over us to the point where we will choose just to not do something or not even try because of that. And that is, in my opinion, doing a disservice to yourself, betraying yourself what you love to do, because we get so hung up on our struggles that we feel like it's useless to invest in our passions and in ourselves. And as we're saying here, it's authentic luxury. So she points out it's not about getting designer clothes or spending a bunch of money on a new car or something like that. It can be something as small as buying fresh fruit and using that in your day-to-day life for just like a nice little treat. I think one of the things here is kind of shifting your perspective on what is luxury and what can bring you joy. It doesn't have to be something huge. The little things do matter. And yeah, sometimes that's kind of a cliche thing to say, but I mean, sometimes that's really all you have to cling on to and all that you have to bring you joy. And so it's important that you still make something like that happen for yourself. It's important that no matter how big or small it is, that you still indulge in it because it's what's going to bring you joy. And that is a priority. You deserve to feel joy in any type of capacity. This could also mean spending time with friends, going to a park that you've always wanted to go to, but you just keep making excuses to not go, finishing the book that has been sitting on your desk for 5 months, buying a bag of candy at the grocery store, not feeling guilty about it. Sometimes this can be hard. We've talked about it in previous weeks where we feel like we don't deserve things or there's not a justified reason for us to do this or that. We might even find that maybe it's not us that feel that way, but outside people try to project these negative thoughts about indulging in that kind of stuff. My cat in the background. She calls these wet blanket statements. She has an example of how she had finally saved up the money to get herself a horse. She'd always wanted to do horseback riding, so she was finally at a place in her career where she could afford it, invest in it, so she did it. And she says that a specific person had come up to her and tried to like put a damper on it or, you know, rain on her parade essentially. Kind of like equate this to how fucking like geriatrics will always have something negative to fucking say. I mean, honestly, probably your grandparents have done this to you, maybe even just your parents, but they'll be like, they warn you how, you know, life is just going to get shittier and shittier, and so you just can't do what you used to do when you were young. That's just the way life is, and that's just what you have to do. You keep working and enjoy what you have now because blah blah, you know what I'm saying? These kind of like bitter statements that almost are meant to discourage you even though they think it's like a life lesson. Julia says that someone specifically did this to her, like, you know, oh well, are you even going to have time to do this with all the work that you have to do, and this trying to instill this doubt in her that what she's doing is a waste of time basically. And Julia says, I was saddened by it. It reminded me of the vulnerability of all artists, even very famous ones, to the shaming I should be working side of themselves that discourages creative pleasures. And she continues from this idea of luxury into the revisitation of what she calls the universal flow, which is kind of what I think she was talking about when we were discussing finding the river, letting it lead us, letting us take us to our next creative spark or what have you. And so if we do not provide ourselves with these luxuries, with our alone time, with the capacity to experience joy in the process, our well dries up, the river stops flowing, we lose the flow, we become barren, we become a shell, we betray our inner child, and we just simply can't let this happen. Like, it's not an option. We have to do what brings us true joy. We have to allow ourselves to experience joy, and we can't let the wet blanket statements take over. We can't let other people's projections, remember the crazy makers, okay? And so Julia then asks us, what does bring us true joy? Why are we not allowing allowing ourselves to engage in what brings us joy. She had a really good example of this specific inner turmoil of we know what brings us joy, but then we don't engage in it because of several factors. So there was this man who really started to dive into his creative side, realizing that he really loved music to the point he wanted to try actually playing an instrument. So eventually he bought a drum set and he started to practice in his basement, and he made the comment that he thought his wife and daughter would be embarrassed by how bad he was when he had first started playing. Side note, remember how we've been saying that it's okay to try at something and be bad at it. Your perfectionist inside of you, that is basically like your number one hater, is telling you that if you're not perfect at something immediately, then just don't even do it. So keeping that in the brain space, so he says that, you know, he thought his wife and daughter would be embarrassed by that. But what is he really doing here, he asks himself. And he says he's blaming his wife and daughter as the reason why he shouldn't keep practicing. But the real reason he even said that to begin with is because he was embarrassed that he wasn't good at it immediately when he started practicing the drum. He was embarrassed that he was trying something and he didn't sound like, you know, one of the greatest drummers on the earth. What a way to immediately steal the joy from something, because you place this huge unrealistic expectation on yourself that you're gonna sound like fucking Travis Barker or whatever, or Taylor Hawkins, when you only been playing for 2 months and you're expecting perfection out of it already. It's just like, just let it happen. You have to be okay with not being that great at something, but if you keep up with it, one day you will be. And so expecting perfection and mastery when he'd only been playing for 2 months was the creative block. He was blocking himself due to the idea of perfectionism, and that if you aren't good right away, you shouldn't even try and you should just give up, which is probably, I think, one of the greatest enemies, especially when it comes to an instrument, drawing, painting. In summation, allow yourself to try and be bad at things. Allow yourself to do things that may be looked at as silly, because ultimately, who cares? Especially as adults, we get into this space of like, we're not children anymore, so like we're not allowed to indulge in silliness or to have fun. Like, we take ourselves so fucking seriously, which again, we've talked about this in prior chapters. So also allowing yourself a safe space to create, allowing yourself to have things that are yours and only yours. This is very critical to your inner child as well, because children love things that are theirs, mine. And Julia ends this section in saying, creativity lives in paradox. Serious art is born from serious play. And so that brings us to the end of week 6 and on to our assignments. So after the chapter of luxury, there was 2 exercises based around money and finances. One of them was like a listing one. So, you know, you have prompts and then you fill in the answer off the cuff, whatever first comes to your mind. She had a counting exercise, which was you're supposed to just get like a little pocketbook or something, if you will, a notepad, and then track your spending and then review how you spend your money and see where your money is really being in place. You know, are you actually ever really spending on yourself or things that you enjoy? Are you ever really investing in your creativity, or is it more so just going to like necessities or things of that nature? Hey, I did not do that shit. I'm sorry, Julia, but I'm not fucking being an accountant for my shit for a whole week. Like, I'm pretty aware of what I spend my money on because I don't have much of it to spend to begin with. You know what I'm saying? It's going to rent. It's going to my surplus of bills that I'm paying every fucking month. It's going to food, my cats, and then whatever I have left over, you know, bitches will spend it how they feel so inclined to. So yeah, I mean, I did like the first day, so you know, like there's that. Yeah. There were some assignments I did think were fun. She says to like reread the basic principles every day, read your artist prayer. Again, I still haven't done the artist prayer. I don't foresee me actually doing that shit. The 2 of them were natural abundance. So you're supposed to, 1, pick rocks that you find are pretty and keep them somewhere. And then the other one was flowers or leaves. So for my artist date, I went to this park near my house that has a rose garden and then kind of like a community garden space that has a bunch of different foliage and other flowers and stuff. So I did actually pick flowers and I have them pressing in a book right now. They're supposed to be ready tomorrow, like fully dried and shit like that. Granted, it was like fucking 98 degrees outside and I was sweating my ass off. But I was like, all the rocks, I'm like, these shits are fucking ugly looking. Like, they're not even cool. So I didn't do that shit. But I did pick the flowers. Another one was just a task of clearing, so whether it be clothing or what have you, throw stuff out that you don't need anymore. Which I did do. I threw out some just really worn out clothing that I didn't even think was worth donating. Another one was bake something. I just made cookies. I didn't really do anything too crazy, but I mean, it was nice, and I did eat all the cookies, so that was good. Another one, which actually I do want to do, but I was like, I don't know where to buy fucking postcards, and I don't want to buy them off of Amazon, but one of them was send postcards to 5 of your friends just randomly. So I will do that. I think that's kind of a cute thing. I used to actually write letters with all of my friends when I was a kid. We would write letters all the time to each other. And then another clearing exercise was make some changes to your home environment, which I have done. I've repotted a lot of plants that needed it. I did some propagation of some, so now I have a couple of plants growing from their mother plants. I finally redid most of my desk area. And now I'm like at war with my fucking cat because ever since I redid my desk area, this motherfucker always want to be sleeping and shit over here, and so I can't never use it. She had another list activity, which she listed 10 things, and then out of every single category, you list 5 of your favorite things of that. So like, for instance, flowers, trees, fruits, all that stupid shit. There was a couple others that were, again, money and like abundance related that I didn't really, I don't know, like one of them was any changes in your financial situation or your perspective on it, any new, even crazy ideas about what you would love doing. And it's like, no, not really, actually. I'm not in the space where I don't know what I love to do. I do know what I love to do. So I don't necessarily feel like I'm still trying to discover that or figure that out. Now, that's not to say that I won't find more things that I love doing, which I do feel like I have. Like I do enjoy editing videos and producing stuff. I think that's really fun. It's just very tedious. I don't have a lot of equipment, so it is a long process, but I mean, that's something that I think I've learned more that I like to do that I haven't really dived into necessarily. And there's other things that I would love to do that I just don't feel like I can really fit into my life right now. Streaming and doing Let's Plays, I would love to do that again. I do enjoy that. I mean, I love video games, so why not fucking record myself playing them? But it's just not something I'm prioritizing right now because I want to finish my album. I have my karaoke shit I'm involved in right now. Mixing that with a social life and going to the gym, it's just not a priority right now. So those were some of the tasks. That being said, it took me 6 weeks, but I did fill this entire thing. So now I have moved on to a different notebook. I actually got a larger one because I just would like more space, especially because we've been doing a lot of image filing activities and I would like to just be able to, fit them in here. I got bored and just put a bunch of stickers in this shit one day. LOL. In summation though, this was my weakest week. I mean, I honestly wasn't even that thrilled to start this bullshit for week 6. I was kind of like, I'm about to just skip this and go to week 7, but I persevered. I did do all of my morning pages. Ironically, as much as I say I hated this week, I did find myself diving into more creative thoughts in my morning pages for week 6. I did some brainstorming during my morning pages for a song I'm working on, and then for ideas for my karaoke group. And as I think a lot of people, the more you kind of openly speak about something or write about it, the more the more the gears start spinning and you start thinking of like more and more things and cooler stuff. That was something I did do a lot in my morning pages. There's also just been a lot of unfortunate worldly events happening that I don't care to extrapolate on. But if you know me, you know that I have a lot to say. So I did, of course, I still always discuss those things in my morning pages. I mean, I already kind of talked about it, but my artist date, I did go on, and it was to the park. And it was actually really nice. I might try doing this again and not listening to music while I did it. I did have my earbuds in and I was listening to Preacher's Daughter by Ethel Cain. But I walked around, I picked the flowers, I even walked deeper and went where the little creek area was. They had these cool little shade spots that had all these plants, and I thought it was kind of cool because they're like these little ecosystems that they've kind of created, and they label all the plants and where they come from originally and stuff like that. So I thought it was pretty cool. But yeah, no, it was good. I felt like it was very peaceful and it was kind of just a tranquil activity to do, and I don't necessarily like physically touching grass that much, but I enjoyed it. Pretty to look at, and it's just very stress-free and easygoing, and so I enjoyed that. Synchronicity, my original response to this was that I don't know, and I don't know that I can identify any synchronicity, but going into week 7, I think I could actually change that answer, but I will wait until my week 7 check-in to explain why I feel that way now. And then 4, any issues or what have you. I mean, my major issue is just with this chapter, I wasn't feeling inspired by it. It wasn't resonating with me. I started all the assignments super fucking late, and it was hard for me to find the wherewithal to really be involved in week 6. So I think that was my biggest issue, honestly. It took some real perseverance for me to do some of the assignments and to really get invested. It is what it is. I mean, I knew going into this book that it's not like every single week is going to be the greatest thing ever. There is going to be shit that is not for me or I have more trouble with in other weeks. So it's okay. It's not the end of the world. That was my biggest hurdle, was really just doing this fucking bullshit for week 6, I will say. But I got over the hump, and we're in week 7 and we're going strong now. So that was week 6, y'all. And you know, bitches are doing what they have to. I'm about to see Beyonce July 4th, Cowboy Carter tour. We got our first Ellen karaoke this past Wednesday. Very sad, very unfortunate, but still I rise. I think this is the first day that my house has been below 78 degrees, so we thank God for that. Won't he do it now? Okay. I'll see y'all week 7. Thanks for watching, and if you didn't watch, fuck you.